Hey there, it's Mackenzie, your host of Winning. We're looking for sponsors for the podcast. If you have a business that you would like to promote to thousands of people, send us an email at podcastwinning@gmail.com or send us a message on social media. I cannot wait to hear from you. Now on to the show.
Winning is your guide to making it in business. Join our award-winning host and entrepreneur, Mackenzie Kilshaw, and special guests in casual conversations that will educate and inspire you on your business journey. Winning will help you learn the hard lessons the easy way with guidance from celebrated entrepreneurs and business leaders. It's fun. It's informative. It's winning.
Hello, I am your host, Mackenzie Kilshaw, the host of Winning, and today's guest is Maria Dismondy. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me, Mackenzie.
I'm so excited to have you on. We always do a little chat before we start recording, and I said I've never had an author on. Do you have a publishing company? This is so cool. So I'm very excited to have you and to get some information maybe that we haven't chatted about yet. So Maria is the owner of Cardinal Rule Press. She's the author of a parenting book. She's dedicated to having her publishing company produce picture books that empower children with timeless messages of hope, courage, and of course, the golden rule. And she works diligently to have children's literature that represents diversity while remaining dedicated to messages that make a difference. So I think that's really cool, really important in today's day and age. And that's a little bit about you. But Maria, do you want to kind of tell us a little bit more about yourself?
What do you mean about myself?
Well, just so.
Yeah, I graduated as an educator. So I graduated from Michigan State University. I went into teaching for just over a decade. Loved teaching, loved being with the children. And at some point, I always used books. So if you're watching this, video, you can see I have a lot of books. I always used books to guide our conversations in the classroom based on what was going on with my students. And so I was really looking for a book that talked about self-esteem. And I found a lot of titles that had talking animals and talking teddy bears. And I thought, I want the kids to be able to see children in the books that I'm reading to them about self-esteem. And I couldn't find a book. So at that time, I thought, I'm going to write a book. So I wrote my book, Spaghetti in a Hot Dog Bun, back in 2005. It was published in 2008, the timeline. And that kind of just started my career as a writer. So I resigned from teaching. And as we grew our family, I grew the writing business. I wrote 10 picture books and a parenting book. And then somewhere along the line, I was like, I want to be able to give this gift to other people who have messages to share with the world. And I started Cardinal Rule Press, which is my publishing company. We are a traditional press, and we have stuck to the niche of realistic fiction only.
Yeah, that's super cool because I feel like, as you said, you started out as a teacher. So obviously books are important to you as a teacher, but to totally make a turn in your career and go from teaching to author to publisher, that is a lot of pivoting.
It was a lot of pivoting, and it seems as though I pivot every 10 years. That's been happening. Super scary, very scary to do that. But I had a husband who believed in me, and I knew I could make it happen in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, super scary. And I remember when I told my dad, he said, well, you didn't go to college to write books. And I said, well, yes, but it helped me get to where I'm at today. And he said, well, you're not going to have health insurance if you quit teaching. And I was like, well, I have to pay money for health insurance, but it's the choice I'm making to be an entrepreneur. And so he was really scared. And I can see, he invested in my education, and he thought, oh my goodness, you're going to be out there on your own. How are you going to make this happen? So.
Yeah, I get a lot of questions about that. Like, how did you quit your corporate job that you knew exactly how much money you're getting and you had vacation time and you had, like you say, healthcare? How do you just up and quit that? And you're right, it is scary. I don't even know another word to use, but it's scary. And I think just having that faith in yourself and knowing that it's going to work. And maybe that's blind faith, or maybe that's preparation and knowing that you can make it. But it is definitely scary.
It's scary. And I don't know if it's going to work all the time. It's definitely a roller coaster of ups and downs, but at the same time, I wouldn't go back. So I enjoy what I do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think too, it's lessons learned, right? I mean, there's always in any point in your entrepreneurial life, or if you have a small business, even if you have a career job or you work for someone else, there's highs and lows, right?
Yeah.
It's not that everything is fantastic or everything's terrible. It goes in waves, and it doesn't matter if you just have a career job, it's the same thing, right? And I think as long as you're prepared for that, and you know that that's how things go and that's life, right? It's easier to get through.
For sure.
Yeah. So did you always, you went to school to be a teacher, you went to university to be a teacher. Did you always want to be a teacher? Did you have that writing in you? Like, were you a writer as a kid? How did you get from teacher to author?
Yeah, I've always loved to read. My dad would say on family vacations, it was kind of annoying because I would just be off reading all the time. I didn't care about where we were, what we were doing. I was just engrossed in a book all the time. And I wrote in my journal for years. I have, I think, 23 completely filled journals. So I was always kind of expressing myself through writing. And not to say I'm that great of a writer, but I definitely learned how to take a message and put that through in my writing. So did I always want to be a teacher? Probably. I don't know if I should stop, but probably. I definitely.
Sorry, my old school telephone is ringing here. Those do still exist, by the way. Sorry there. Continue on. Yeah.
So did I always want to be a teacher? I don't know. I at some point I wanted to work at Taco Bell. I used to play restaurant all the time at our house. But I did like playing teacher, and I knew I wanted to do something that had to do with giving back to community. I started off in social work. So I definitely wanted to do something with giving. And that's truly what the publishing industry does. And especially children's publishing is we're giving and we're providing this bridge, which is the book, between the caregiver and the child, so that, they have this book that is a bridge to be able to talk about difficult conversations and to be able to connect with child and caregiver.
I love that. And spaghetti in a hot dog bun, that is like such a catchy title. And I think I kind of know, but did that come from an experience you had as a child?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I eat spaghetti in a hot dog bun. I do eat a lot of weird foods. I don't even want to tell you what I ate for breakfast this morning, but okay, maybe I should. It was a leftover cold hamburger with ketchup on it.
Oh, so you know what? Hey, cold pizza or cold burger warmed up, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
So yeah, it definitely did. And it's a story about being teased and made fun of for being who you are. And I was always teased for who I was. And, I have this big hair, and it gets bigger in the humidity, and it gets curlier in the humidity. And kids made fun of me for that. And my mom got me a perm at one point. I don't know what the point of that was. It made it worse. I don't know if she thought it would make it better, but it just got bigger and bigger. So I was teased a lot as a kid, as a lot of us are. I
was going to say that is something that literally everyone goes through, right? And some worse than others. But having a book for a child to relate to, and okay, that I've gone through that, and that this is how we get through it. And it makes it a lot easier. You're right, for a parent or caregiver to talk to their kids about, being teased or how to get through it, right? It just makes it so much easier.
Yeah, being resilient. And what do you do if you get knocked down? You get back up again. So, and our books, my books and then other books published by Cardinal Rule Press really provided a lot of comfort during the pandemic because the topics are so timely.
A huge thank you to our sponsor, Just For You Day Spa and Wellness. Just For You is Canada's premier day spa with 5 locations in Alberta and Saskatchewan. The award-winning luxury spa features Leah Reese cosmetics and iconic Betty jewelry that you can also purchase online. Visit www.justforyoudaySpa.com to book your service or to purchase a gift card. Yeah, exactly. And I think too, it's having that, especially as kids, I mean, as adults, we're like, okay, this didn't work out. I'm going to try something different. That's harder as a kid. But when you're teaching those lessons to children, then when they become adults, they already have the lesson.
True. So true. Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah. It makes it a lot easier to get through life. I love it. I love that. Just love the title of that and the message too. And we're going to talk a little bit more about, importance of lessons and stuff. But I want to just chat a little bit more about the fear of leaving your corporate job to pursue your passion, because we talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but for a lot of people, that's the stopping point and they don't ever follow through on their passion because of that fear and the unknown. And what do I do if I can't pay my mortgage? Right. So you obviously had a supportive spouse, but how did you take that leap and how did you, have that faith that it was going to work out?
Yeah, I'm not even sure I had the faith that it was going to work out. I think I was so busy in making it work that I didn't have a lot of time to worry. I literally said, this is what I want to do. I kind of looked at the numbers too, and I'm not a numbers person, but I thought, okay, if I can sell this many books and I can do this many speaking engagements, which speaking at schools, that's something that I had more control over at the time because I could be calling the schools and pitching my programs or emailing, what have you. Selling books was a lot harder because that was the distributor's role. So I thought, what's in my control? What are things that I can do to make income? And I put numbers on it. So every month, like, what do I have to bring in? And it's kind of how I started doing it. And then I also had I've always taught aerobics and fitness. So there was always that to fall back on. It's not a huge moneymaker, but I knew I could always pick up hours there if I needed to. And this was in my head, definitely. Like, if this isn't going to work, what am I going to do? Okay, I can tutor children from teaching. I could go back to teaching part-time. I could teach aerobics. So I definitely had like, if this doesn't work, what can I do? But I looked at the numbers and just every single day, 7 days a week, I put something into it.
That's great advice, because I think a lot of people have that faith or that, okay, I'm going to do it and I'm just going to take the leap. I'm going to take the step and just do it. But they probably don't sit down and actually figure it out on a kind of per day basis. And I love that advice because it's an easier pill to swallow if you think, oh, I only have to, if I can produce $500 a day or whatever your amount was, right? That makes it a little bit easier to say, I need to make this many thousands of dollars in a year. And that probably made it, a little bit more, I don't want to say bearable, but a better,
tolerable. You just have to look at it step by step versus, and that's the same thing with any type of a goal. You can't say, all right, next year I want to make this amount of money. You can say that, but then you have to break it down. Well, what are you doing daily? What are you doing weekly, monthly, quarterly to make that happen?
I love it. I love that advice. And I, on a previous episode, I talked kind of similar with another guest about this. And we kind of said, like, at the end of the day, if you follow your passion and it doesn't work, what's the worst that happens? You get a job, you get a different job. Mm-hmm. You try it again in a different way, right? It's not life and death, really. We kind of think it is, and it's really not.
Yeah. And I will say, I worked both jobs parallel for a while. I'm trying to think how long, probably 2 years before I completely walked away from teaching. So I went part-time teaching and worked them parallel just to kind of, build. And so I think sometimes there might be an overlap and you might have to do a little bit of hustle. And, right now I feel like that's kind of a trigger word for some, like, I'm not going to hustle. Self-care, I don't want to overdo myself, but I don't know. For some of us, if you're walking away from, a solid job with really great healthcare and good hours, you might need to do a little hustle to feel good about leaving. So it's not for everyone.
No, it's true. And the thing too is you have to do that hustle at the beginning, right? And as you work your way through, I always say it's true. My first year of business, I did not take a day off. I literally worked every day. And maybe I wasn't at my business every day, but I was working on my business, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And so you do need to do that so that people know who you are. They know what you're about. Then you're building that network, or you're getting people invested in you or your business. For you, it was your books, right? Yeah. To let them know, oh, we want to support this person. She's doing something really great. And that is really important because that's part of success. That's how you make it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I agree. But now I don't do a lot of hustling. And so I've been doing it for over, I don't know, gosh, like almost 15, 20 years. And, my husband and I just went on a vacation. We were out of the country for 10 days, and I've built up a team so that I can do something like that. I checked in a few times just to make sure everything was moving, and it was great. So it was hard to come back, definitely, because, but, yeah. So I think you're right. It has to look different in the beginning than it does 15 years later.
Yeah. And once you have that team, that's why you have a team, right? That's why you have someone to do your social media or someone to manage your group of people, whatever it is, because that gives you that freedom or flexibility then to be able to spend time with your children, go on a vacation, do your workout, whatever it is, right? I mean, you can't do everything forever. And you should only really do the things that you're really good at or that bring you income, right? And then, as I always say, farm out the other stuff. So whether you have a team or you're paying an outside person to do it, because you can't take on everything in your business forever. It's not realistic. And some people are better at things than you, right? We all kind of realize that at some point. Hey, this person's better at social media than me. I'm going to give them social media. Whatever it happens to be, right?
For sure. I agree.
Yeah. So author to having your own publishing company, that was another huge step. And so was that actually scarier than leaving your teaching job to become the author?
Yes, it was. And I had worked with a business coach, and first of all, she told me that I should fire my husband from doing my accounting. She didn't think that was a good idea. And I was like, really? He doesn't cost any money. And she's like, but he's not giving you monthly P&Ls. Like, he's not getting the work done. And I was like, okay. And the other thing she told me was, I think you should start your own publishing company. And I was like, no. And she said, no, I think you should. So I didn't have the confidence in myself that I could do it because I didn't go to school for business. I went to school to educate children. I didn't want to go back to school. I think I was like maybe pregnant with my second or third child at the time. And I thought, no, I'm not starting a business. And then I did. And I just learned you take it step by step, day by day. And I've learned so much through podcasts. Kudos there. From reading books, from networking with other individuals, from, participating in online webinars, from finding mentors and kind of asking mentors for advice. And I've made mistakes and I've learned from those mistakes. And it's brought me to the point where 7 months ago, I purchased a second publishing company. So now we acquired more books. So it's good. It's an evolution, and everything is just all about growing and learning and falling down and getting back up.
I love that because that is so true, right? I mean, the personal growth alongside the business growth that you've had is huge. Because you didn't start out writing books to say, I'm going to have a publishing company and purchase another publishing company and take over kind of this area. No, you started because you wanted to share these lessons with children. And look at how far you've gone, not even starting out on that path.
Oh,
right?
Thank you. Yeah, I think, keeping the messaging and the reason and the why of why I began all of this, keeping that at the forefront always. I think that's really been important and makes what I do authentic and meaningful.
That is literally the best advice you could give, because your reason why, or your mission statement, your values, whatever you categorize that as, that should always be what's propelling you forward, right? And every decision that you make should be a step in that direction.
For
And
sure.
yeah, and sometimes it takes you on a path that you never thought you'd go on or didn't realize that you'd be on. But look at where you're at now, right? And that is amazing. So congrats on that, because that's
Thank you.
that's really what success is, right? I mean, people think of success as financial success. Oh, I'm making a lot of money. Well, that's great, but you're making a difference, and that's what you set out to do, right?
For sure. The legacy of it all.
Exactly. Oh, I love that. This is kind of crazy, but I actually am writing a chapter for a book. So I'm going to be contributing author in a book. I am not an author. I've never written anything ever, but it is really about entrepreneurship and business. And a lot of what I talk about is the legacy that you're leaving and what success is. And that's what I really think that sometimes we get lost in. Success is I have a lot of money, or a lot of people know my name. But really it's, what are you leaving behind, and what are the lessons that you're teaching other people, or what are the things that you'll be known for? And I love that, that your legacy will be the values that you're instilling. And that's actually my next kind of question, as a little segment here, but why is it important to instill the values from your book into our children? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, so I went back to school for a master's, and the master's is in curriculum and research. So I'm one of those kind of research nerds. I like to read about different studies and see what the results are and what were the, different control groups, et cetera, et cetera. But long story short, I've learned over the years that our current generation of children, and especially college-aged children or young adults, they are going into the workforce, and they are, getting hired in because of these amazing GPAs. I didn't even know until a few years ago that you could get over a 4.0. So they're going into the workforce with these 4.6 GPAs, and they're smart cookies. But at the end of the day, they're lacking some foundational character skills, social skills, like being able to work with a team, being able to, problem solve when something doesn't go right. There's just a set number of these skills that college students are lacking. So I thought, well, okay, I don't work with college students, so let's take it down. Let's start with that early intervention. Let's focus on those skills in the books that we produce, so that children are learning and they're seeing other children go through these situations, how they're handling it with these social skills. And then when they're in that situation, they can say, oh gosh, I remember that one time I read that book. I'm looking at the book on the shelf here, Raja's Pet Camel. What did Raja do in that situation? Or, I read the book Bucket Fillers by Carol McLeod. Like, what is bucket filling all about? How can I make this person feel better? Oh, I can say nice things. I can do nice things for them. So really, books are they teach you things, but you're entertained by them at the same time. So that's kind of where it started. It was this research put out by Career Builder on these very smart people and these very smart young adults that are lacking some basic skills.
Yeah, I love that. And as a former business owner with employees and staff, it was kind of that younger group. And I hate to kind of put it on them, but it was. I mean, something would happen and they'd be like, what do I do? And, and I'd say, well, what do you think you should do? Right? Because if you just tell them what to do, they're never going to learn anything. So if small kids can learn these things, right? How to, like you say, work in a group or solve a problem.
I don't put it on our young adults at all. They're growing up in a different generation. They're growing up where access to information is right on Google. So if everybody can find out the answer by just simply picking up their device, then what makes you different than the rest? Work ethic's going to make you different. Being able to work on a team, being able to create something out of nothing, going above and beyond the internet and finding ideas there, but, creating ideas on your own. So I think if with every generation, there's going to be the pros and the cons, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. I remember, having to learn like long division and all these things where now it's like literally your phone can just tell you that in seconds, right? Like we didn't have a phone to look at that. And so it's being resourceful and being able to figure things out, because if you have a job at some day or you are a business owner and you are facing a problem, you got to figure that out, right? You can't just Google everything and learn what to do. That's not the way it goes. So I love that you're instilling this into our kids. It's fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So speaking of making an impact, so you're making an impact now on children's lives. And I think we kind of talked about this, but it's important, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's so important.
So important.
Yeah.
And that's the, I always point back to me. That's the parenting book that I wrote, Sunnyside Upbringing, Raising Kind and Caring Individuals, because we are not gifted a manual. This was like my biggest thing being a parent. I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I know how to do this? How do I know how to do that? You're not given the rules. And then even if somebody did hand you a manual, there's no right or wrong. It's going to look different in every single family, right? So I created this book where a parent could pick it up, and I'm a working parent, so I wanted to make something for people who didn't have a lot of time. You could pick up this book, you could read one chapter in January, and it's really for younger children, right? Pre-K, infants all the way through grade 5, so around the age of 10 or 11. So birth to age 10 or 11. You could pick up this book, read the January chapter, which is maybe 10 pages, and you focus on a couple different character traits that month. There's activities, there's books you can read, there's everything you need to know. You just read that chapter and run with it. So just really by the end of the year, you've instilled all these different character traits. You've done these different activities. There's activities you can do in the car, just asking your children questions when you're driving in the car to stimulate that conversation around maybe generosity or maybe around tough topics like, your children came home from school and they're telling you about the lockdown drill they had for active shooters. Like that is a scary topic to talk to with our children,
Yes.
but it's an important conversation to have. So, there's just tips on all these different things. And I bring that one up because it's 12 chapters plus a bonus chapter that talks about things like drowning and school shootings and all those tough topics. So that is kind of what I did is I thought, gosh, here I am trying to do this early intervention with the children, but what about the caregivers, the parents and the teachers? What kind of resource can I create from my research for them?
I love that, because let's be serious. You have a baby, first time parent, they pass you a baby and you go home. There's nothing that help. I mean, your driver's license, you took a test for, you prepared for, right? So
even that drive home, like just driving, like I had been driving for 30 years when we had our first child, but when my husband drove us home, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the scariest thing ever.
Exactly. And you're responsible for this child. And I think from my experience, your job as a parent is to prepare your child for life. And I always think, make my child a better person than I am, right? Like instill these values, instill these lessons in them so that they can make these decisions and, live their life the best way possible too. So I love that you're helping parents do that and starting those conversations. I mean, we live in a very different world, even than when we were kids growing up, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There was not, school shootings. There was not those things, or they weren't talked about. A lot of things just weren't talked about. And being able to give a parent a way to have that conversation with their child is just a really great gift that you're giving parents too.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was a labor of love. I will tell you that.
Yeah, for sure. Because it is, I'm sure there was a lot of times being the entrepreneur and being the author, how do I go about doing this? Right? How do we talk about these hard things? And we have to, because that's what prepares us, right?
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Preparation and procedure. I talk about that lots in business. It works for parenting too.
It does. I mean, parenting, like I joke with my husband, but I'm the house manager. I'm not just an owner of a publishing company, but I'm also house manager. And he laughs because it is. It's a family. It's like a business. There's a lot to do.
For sure.
Running to keep it moving. So
yeah, you're the CEO of your family, right? do you find that hard to balance? And I know balance is a hard word because I don't ever truly think it's balanced, but you do have children, you do have a spouse, you have a business, you're an author. Like, how do you make sure that all runs smoothly?
I don't know.
Good question.
That is a really great question. I don't know if I have the answer to it because what I said 10 years ago is very different than what I might say today. But I keep to-do lists and I've got my list for the day, and what doesn't get done just moves to the next day. And, I shut it down around 4:30 when the kids come home from school every day. Depending if, when I bought the business for about 6 months, I did not shut it down at 4:30. So that was challenging because I'd put the kids to bed and then I would keep working. And I didn't like that. And it didn't feel good, but I knew it had to be done because of that transition. And then making time, you have to get things on the calendar for you and your spouse, your partner, because that is like so important. And even if it's him and I wake up in the morning, the first thing we do is have a cup of coffee. So that's our time together before everyone wakes up, or we'll walk the dog some days. So it's just, I think about the important people in my life and I make sure that I'm making time for them. And even with the kids, it might be, hey, I have to run to Home Depot. Who's coming with me? And that drive, I get one-on-one time with that kid. So
that's great. Yeah, and it looks different every day, right? When people say, how do you balance it? I always kind of like cringe when I hear that because I don't think it's a complete balance. Sometimes you do have to work a little bit more and sometimes you get to spend more time with the people. But I really think your point on scheduling is so important. Putting that time in your calendar, blocking it off, right? And saying this is family time and no work gets done during that time, right?
I like to, on Sundays, I like to invite a family over to our house. Usually it's friends or it's family. And because in the past after Sunday church, I would come home, I would do chores all day, and then I would like catch up on work Sunday night. So now I've been doing this for the last couple of years, but if we have plans to be with people on Sunday nights, that's a great end to my week. I'm not, working, I'm connecting with people. And so that's been a fun tradition that we both started. We started it before the pandemic and then it took a major halt, but we've gotten back into it again. Sunday fun day.
I love that because it gives you that day that you know for sure that you're going to have, I'm not working, I'm resting, relaxing, recharging, visiting with family, friends, doing something with your kids, whatever it is that gives you that fulfillment of family, right?
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have to, right? We have to spend time. I know we talked about really hustling and working hard, but we have to schedule that time for the rest, relax, recharge, because otherwise Monday comes. If you're working all day Sunday and Monday comes and you're right back in the throes of it all, you're probably not your best self as a business person, right?
Yeah, for sure. You got to fill your tank.
Exactly. Fill your tank. And if you're overflowing and you're not able to be the best you're no good kind to anyone, right?
Mm-hmm. True. So true.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about diversity. Because I know that your books do, they do talk about that. And obviously we know our society now is very diverse, which is fantastic. But yeah, let's just talk about that and why it's important. Kind of the same as the values, to talk to our kids about that.
Yeah. Well, again, it comes back to research. It started off, it was very organic because the first couple of books that I wrote, I didn't know that there was a lack of diversity. I didn't particularly focus on the fact that I wanted diversity in the books because there was a lack of it in children's picture books. I was teaching a very diverse classroom. And so I wanted my books to reflect who I was teaching. So that's how it started off. And then somewhere around, I think 2009 or 2011 or somewhere down the road, Lee and Low, it's a publishing company, they came out with a survey and they did some research and found that a very small percentage of children's picture books represented certain different groups, Asian Americans and, American Indians, and just so many different groups. Indian Americans, BIPOC, you have it. So with that research, I just thought, gosh, we're doing realistic fiction. We're going to continue to make sure our books aren't just representing different colors of children and different cultures of children, but, we're going to talk about like social, economic differences, right? So a child who comes from a wealthy family, a child who comes from a family that is not wealthy, or physical differences, or, mental health issues. So really just looking at diversity as it's not just the color of our skin, but there are so many different ways to define diversity. So our team a couple years ago, I think it was in 2020, we did an audit on all of our books, and we said, okay, let's look at all these different aspects of diversity, and let's see which of our picture books have what and what are we missing. And so the last couple of years, we've been trying to kind of fill those voids. It's important because we want our children to see a variety of humans and situations. And, I just had a call with someone. She said she lives in a super, super small town in Oregon. I don't know what that town looks like, but there's only several hundred people in that town. So,
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, we can't imagine that everyone has the same classroom as my children have here in Michigan. It's going to look different depending on where you are in the world. And so we want to give these windows and mirrors for children. We provide a window that they can look into a different culture, and a mirror where they can kind of be reflecting back on their own culture that they are currently experiencing. So
I love that. And it's so important both ways, right? It's important to see yourself and be like, that's me, especially as a child, like, that's me, that's what I look like, or that's a similar situation as me. And also to learn about other people, right? I mean, our world is so diverse now. It's so amazing to learn all of these other cultures and traditions that they have, and having that available for kids, right? As adults, it's maybe easier. You travel, or you, go to a different kind of restaurant or something like that. But to have these for our kids, so that it's just a part of their life. And if they grow up to be an entrepreneur or business person, your clients are diverse, right? You've got all different people that you work with and that you do business with. And it's really important that we are exposed to that and know about it and understand it. So I love that. It's just so important. And we need more. We need more of it, right? In our world.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Do you have a most important lesson that you can share that you've learned on your journey from teacher to author to owner of a publishing house?
Yes, that is a really wonderful question that I love. And it's a good one to kind of wrap all encompassing, right? To wrap it all up. I think my greatest advice is that the information is out there. You have to have the eagerness and the persistence to learn and to find the information, to find the answers to help you to keep growing and moving forward. So if the information's out there, you just have to find the time to gather it through different resources. Like I talked about mentors and networking groups and webinars to help yourself to, move forward. And don't do it alone. Don't feel like you have to do it alone. I think my world really got a lot bigger and better when I started networking and putting myself in different groups where I could learn from other people's experiences.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, every person I talk to, we talk about the network, right? We talk about the people that, you're having a hard time with something, you can ask for advice. Or things are great and you can maybe give advice to somebody else that's going through a hard time, right? Having yourself surrounded by a group of people that really are there for you is so important. And it can be really lonely to be an entrepreneur.
It can. That's why we have 2 dogs now.
Yeah. Well, and I always say too, like a lot of times your spouse or significant other maybe doesn't really understand it, and that's usually who we go to with problems or things like, oh, this didn't work out, whatever. And they're like, well, I don't know anything about that. That's not their area of expertise. So to have other people that you can talk to is really important.
It is.
Yeah. And is there one thing you wish you would have known?
I wish I would have known, I think really to ask for help earlier on. I tried to do a lot of things on my own, I tried to learn and figure it all out. And there's just some things that are really hard for me to understand. And so now what I do is I hire people who are experts in those areas, like attorneys and business analysts and accountants.
Exactly. That is fantastic advice, because we all know we're not good at everything, right?
Yeah.
And to try to figure out your accounting, isn't it just easier to have someone that's their job do it, and you can spend your time doing other things?
What you're good at and what brings you joy, for sure.
Exactly. I love that advice. Maria, where can people find you? Because I know that people are going to want to, learn more about you. What is the best place for them to go to be able to learn more?
Yeah, I would say cardinalrulepress.com, and they can reach out to me. I have an Instagram account, Maria Dismondy Books, and I answer messages there, direct messages there. That's me. That's not anyone on my team. And so, yeah, feel free to follow up with any questions you have. I'm happy to answer.
I love that. Thank you so much. I know that there are going to be people, and you still do your speaking, right? In schools?
I do. I actually, just before you, I had a speaking engagement with a school in New York City, and it was virtual. So yes, I do
that's
speaking.
cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. So it doesn't matter where you're listening to this, because we do have worldwide listeners. You can reach out to Maria, and she can talk to your children, or maybe you as a parent, and help you get through, because I think what you're doing is so important. It's making the world a better place, and I really appreciate it. Thank you for being on, and I cannot wait for people to listen to this and get this advice. So thank you, Maria, and for those listening today, thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for listening to Winning. Be sure to subscribe to get all of our new episodes. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, and leave a rating and review wherever you listen to Winning. To catch all of the latest from us, you can follow Winning Podcast on Instagram at winning_podcast, Facebook at Winning Podcast, and on Twitter at Winning Pod. Winning was created and is produced by me, Mackenzie Kilshaw. Music created by Summer Furby. Editing by Seth Armstrong. Special thanks to Shauna Foster for voicing our opening. And of course, a huge thank you to this episode's guest. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode.